Good evening and welcome everybody. This is this year's Rotary Foundation seminar. This evening we're going to dedicate as much time as possible to looking at the more practical aspects of what Rotary Foundation does with your money. We have an excellent range of speakers covering both local and international projects, and I'm delighted to be able to welcome this evening our keynote speaker, Dr. John Phillip, who's chair of the Rotary International Fellowship of Healthcare Professionals, who is also a Rotary Past District Governor. Dr. John has been a source of information for this district, in particular with the development of 2 completed and closed disaster response grants. The Rotary Foundation, which is our foundation, was founded over 100 years ago with a simple mission to help you to advance world understanding, goodwill, and peace by improving health, providing quality education, improving the environment, and alleviating poverty. Since it was founded, the Rotary Foundation has spent over $4 billion on life-changing and sustainable projects. In other words, doing good in the world. That sounds all very laudable, but what does it mean in practice? So we're going to get started and try to provide you with that answer. If you've got some questions you'd like to ask this evening, could you please put them in the Q&A box, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen, and we'll try to do them at the end, or we'll send the answers out to you. So please put your name and your club name on your question, please. Our first speaker this evening is the font of all knowledge when it comes to grants in our district. He's the District Grants Officer, Sam Jones. I think it's very important that we give you a basic understanding of the grants available. So Sam will provide you with a short overview of the system. Sam is happy to provide you with a longer and more detailed presentation upon the request. Sam, the floor is yours.
Thank you, John, and good evening, everyone. Just a little bit about me before I start. I've been a Rotarian since early 1970s and mostly at Preston and Mountainous. I'm a former district treasurer and assistant governor. I've been a grants officer for the district since July 2020, and I've still got my L plates on as far as that is concerned. I've got 10 minutes per John to give you an overview of the grants that the foundation makes. There's a lot of detail involved in the process of applying for grants and complying with the conditions on which they are made, which I cannot really cover in any depth in the time I have. But the foundation part of the Rotary International website and the Rotary Learning Centre are excellent sources of information. And of course, I am always very ready to help. Please remember, as you navigate the complexities of the grant system, the benefits that the grants funds you obtain can bring to local and international communities. Always remember the benefits when the complexities are a bit perplexing. Before I go into much detail, I need to give you some building blocks. Very broadly, what our district can receive from the Foundation for Grants depends on what the clubs in the district contributed to the foundation 3 Rotary years ago. The more we contribute, then the more we get back. The foundation officers at all levels are very heavily influenced in their decision-making over grants by the foundation's 7 areas of focus. These are what the foundation will allow its money to be spent on. By way of a quick reminder, the areas of focus are preventing disease, providing clean water, supporting education, growing local economies, saving mothers and children, promoting peace, and supporting the environment. What is called the Foundation's annual fund is the primary source of funding for all grants. At the end of every Rotary year, contributions to the foundation from all clubs in the district to the annual fund go into 2 other funds. 50% goes into the World Fund and 50% goes to the district designated fund. The World Fund portion pays for the worldwide global grants program available to all Rotary districts across the world. And the district designated fund, which is generally abbreviated to DDF, is for our district and other districts to fund the foundation grants and programs of their choice. By way of example, the district designated fund available to our district for the 2022-2023 Rotary year is $47,790, which is higher than usual because of one special factor. Just want to talk about global grants now, if I may. Global grants are really the foundation's program that started in 2013-2014, when 868 grants totaling $47.3 million were awarded. By 2019-2020, 1,359 grants worth $95.5 million were awarded. In 2020-2021, the latest year for which we have figures, 2006 global grants worth $130 million were awarded, with 106 of those grants worth $10.9 million coming to the UK. This is a big success story, and funding at this high level has become difficult for the World Fund to sustain. Global grants are really a combination of funds provided by the sponsor clubs and by districts, and 80% matching funds from the foundation's World Fund. Clubs and districts must adhere to the foundation's reporting deadlines and can be barred from applying for district and indeed global grants if reports are outstanding. Currently, I'm pleased to report that District 1190 has a 100% compliance record, and that's thanks to a lot of hard work by all of us who are involved in the grant process at club and district level. The global grants can support humanitarian projects, scholarships for academic studies and vocational training teams, and much else. The minimum budget for a global grant project is $30,000. 15% of the budget must come from outside the country where the project activity will take place. Clubs and districts contribute district designated funds that the World Fund matches at 80%. District designated funds contributions can come from Rotary districts in any part of the world for a global grant. Our district, District 1190, uses 50% of district designated funds not used for district grants to support global grants applications by District 1190 and other districts at home and abroad. I would like to tell you, by way of an example, about an excellent global grant that our district has recently been involved with, along with Brampton and Longtown Club. The club has a very long-standing relationship with District 9101 in West Africa. And in the recent past, the club has worked very successfully with them, and particularly District Governor Sonny Akufo, on global grant applications in West Africa, for which our district has allocated DDF. Recently, District 9101 and Sonny wish to install 4 toilet blocks in Bamako, which is the capital of Mali, where open defecation is prevalent. This was a $50,000 project, and a global grant application was approved by the foundation. Our district was asked by Brompton and Longtown to provide DDF of $5,000 for the project and for permission for the club to be an international sponsor. Because of the merits of the application and the strength of the relationship with District 9101 and the commitment of the strong Brampton and Longtown team, as well indeed as the short time the project would take to complete, the DDF request and the one to be an international sponsor were agreed. The final report on the project was recently submitted to the foundation, and I have very little doubt that it will be accepted. I'm moving on now to district grants. And district grants can be used to fund a variety of district and club projects that fit into one or more of the areas of focus. These can either be local or international projects. Districts may, by applying to the foundation, use up to 50% of their district designated fund to receive one lump sum district grant annually. This grant can be distributed by the district between qualifying clubs that have applied for a grant, subject to obtaining the foundation's approval. In the 2020-2021 Rotary year, 467 district grants worth $31.1 million were awarded globally by the foundation. In the current Rotary year, District 1190 has applied for and received 13 district grants totaling $19,081. To qualify for a foundation district grant in 1190, a club must attend the district foundation seminar, such as the one we are holding tonight. The maximum district grant that 1190 currently awards per project is 50% of the project cost, but not exceeding £1,500. And a club can normally apply for only one grant per Rotary year. Applications for a district grant must be made on a form which can be obtained either from the grants officer, myself, or downloaded from the foundation grants section of the foundation part of the district website. I'd like to give you some examples now of some successful applications for district grants in 1190. Workington Derwent were awarded a grant of £1,100 to furnish 4 rooms, each of which accommodates 4 girls at a new build orphanage in Aluva in Kerala in India. Each room will have 4 beds, desks, chairs, wardrobes and shelving. The mission of the orphanage is to house, protect and educate orphaned girls who would otherwise be abandoned and exploited. Moving on, Rossendale Club was awarded a grant of £750 to clear overgrown paths and a pond that had become choked with weeds at Millennium Green in Lum in Rossendale. This has improved the recreational space available to villagers and enabled local school children to make visits for ecological studies. Kendal Club received a grant of £350. Their project was for the club, with the help of local scouts, to plant bare root tree samplings in the grounds of Bendrick Trust, a centre that caters for adults and young people with disabilities. I was very amused that the saplings have had to be protected by tubing from the ravages of the deer. Just briefly about the process for district grants, and I will use the dates we will be using for 2022-23. The November seminar is the starting point for the Rotary year 2023-24 grants journey. Between now and late March 2023, when the closing date is, clubs prepare and submit the applications for the projects they want grant funding for to me as the grants officer. The district grants subcommittee meets to discuss the projects and give their approval or otherwise in April 2023. In May 2023, I will submit the district's funding application to the foundation at Evanston. Between May and say July 2023, the foundation in Evanston considers the district applications. The foundation hopefully agrees the district applications and will send the funds to the district bank account between July and September 2023. The district treasurer will then pay the funds to the successful clubs. The money must be paid into the club's charitable trust account. Clubs submit reports to the grants officer detailing progress with the projects by December the 31st, 2023. I want to mention in closing briefly localized project grants. The district has to use £11,000 of surplus funds to set up a localized project grant fund to be administered by the district grants subcommittee, and it is intended that the projects should meet the same criteria as are enforced currently for a foundation district grant to receive one of these grants. The grants subcommittee meets as often as is required to decide whether to approve a grants application, and payments to clubs will be made speedily. So I hope very much that clubs will consider putting in for these localized project grants. Finally, do apply for grants. Your communities will benefit. And as John has said, the foundation is our charity. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Sam. That was that nicely lays down the foundation for this evening's other presentations. As for your L plates, I think you're fully qualified now. Can I make those aware this evening that the facilities that are available to you, the district has a comprehensive list of experienced individuals with excellent knowledge on all aspects of projects for global grants and district grants. International team leader Phil Davis will be able to give you the information you require. Should you need any contact details, please let me know. The foundation provides grants for both local and international projects, and one club which has got a lot of experience of both is Brampton and Longtown Rotary Club. I'm delighted to welcome this evening Randy Aldred and Nick Ramsden, who will be talking about two such projects, namely Incredible Edible and the toilets in Mali. Wendy will be starting off the presentation with Incredible Edible, and Nick, who I've got to say is doing rather well because he's coming in from, where is it?
From Kampala.
Oh, from Kampala, sorry, on Zoom. So thank you very much, Nick, for doing that. So Wendy, it's over to you.
Lovely, thank you, John. Thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. As John's already mentioned, I'm joined by Nick Ramsden, my colleague, who's joining us from Kampala. And the first project that we want to talk about and share with you is Incredible Edible, which some of you may have actually heard of because we did a presentation last year on it. So what is Incredible Edible? Well, it's a worldwide project that began in 2012 down in Todmorden. And their vision is creating a kinder, confident and connected community through the power of food. So it's about taking unloved areas of land, large or small, growing edibles, herbs, vegetable and fruit, and sharing it with anybody and everybody. So people can just help themselves to the produce. And they talk about 3 plates spinning, got learning, community, and also business development. And, you know, Sam was talking about the areas of focus, and this actually covers 5 of the areas of focus, about basic education, the environment, disease prevention, maternal and child health, and economic and community development as well. And Incredible Edible, just like Rotary, they have their own logos and guidelines. So if you do get involved, all the information that you might need is actually available to you. And we started off during COVID, and during COVID pandemic, food security did become an issue, and it's continuing to be an issue as well. And we got started, and we did quite a lot of planning. We had a steering group in Brampton that met on Zoom, and we had dialogue with both parish councils. And our Brampton steering group that still operates today has 8 non-members plus 4 Rotarians. And as we started, we already had several sites ready to go in both Longtown and Brampton. And our initial funding was grants from the co-op and one of the parish councils. And we were also successful in gaining a district foundation grant as well last year, which really helped us kickstart the project. An example of one of our sites is Brampton Community Centre that we've now been operating on for 2 years. We started off with 3 ground level beds, and since then we've added 2 extra raised beds in as well. And in our 2nd year that we're in, crops are very much appreciated by the local community and also by the residents of the adjacent extra care housing for the elderly called Bramble Court. And the residents from Bramble Court come out to talk to us, and they enjoy discussing how they should cook some of the vegetables that we grow. And we have had ongoing discussions with them about what to do with kohlrabi as well. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see at the right-hand side there is a picture of one of the signs. We have 2 different signs. We've actually just replaced them with something that's a bit more all-weather. And one is just advertising who we are and what we're doing, but the one on the screen there, we're actually able to write on, and it just shows what is actually ready and available for people to pick and eat at the current time. Another of our Brampton sites is at the Riverside Estate, and this is based on planters which actually had daffodils in. And we spoke to the Riverside Housing Group, and they allowed us to relocate the daffodils somewhere else. And we've now actually planted these up with fruit and vegetables. And the planters themselves, some of them were looking good, but some of them, as you can see, were very much underused. And so we now have a formal agreement with the housing provider, which is based on a license agreement developed by Calderdale Council, which was developed by them for their incredible edible sites down there. We have a team of 4 local residents who've taken on responsibility of bringing them into productive use. And in fact, we are currently, I understand, painting them. They have to be painted a shade of brown, apparently. I thought we could actually have some really nice bright colours around the estate, but apparently not. But as you can see, got some courgettes, we've got some cabbage there under the netting and some herbs as well. One of our Longtown sites is at the Family Action Centre, and Rotary has been weeding and preparing the 2 raised beds here at this former Sure Start site, which enables families at the centre to utilise them for produce. And we actually funded some tools for the children and the families as well. And the bubble there with the list of herbs, fruit and vegetables, the family and the children decided what they wanted to grow, and we obliged and helped them. And as you can see, they've got a table there full of produce that is available for people to help themselves too. And what is our longer term community impact? And there are certainly a lot of things. Other organisations have actually already used one of our sites as a teaching aid, and Cumbria Wildlife Trust used it as part of the Thriving Communities. And we are currently talking about the possibility, when we get into the spring, of actually using them as sites to teach people how to actually grow vegetables in small spaces, because we think it's something that will probably be needed or is needed. We're also talking to other organisations locally and in Carlisle who might want to start similar projects. It also provides an opportunity to be involved in a gardening project, and in time, hopefully social gatherings. Although I will say, I was on one of the sites yesterday, and I think we did as much talking and socialising as we did actually moving the manure, though that was understandable, I think. Obviously, we have few free edible produce that's there. And what we'd like to do as well is provide a walking route in Brampton linking the various sites, plus other organisations' sites, such as a bee garden and a community garden. And this will be good for locals and tourists. One of the things that I had to do at the end of the grant application is you have to send off a report to Sam for Rotary International, just to say what you've done and the impact and so on. And I really enjoyed writing that. And one of the questions asked, have you any cooperating organisations? And I think we had about 10, because we work with the local community centres, schools, community gardens, parish and city council, and housing associations and the co-op, and it's very much a community project. And we are very grateful to the Rotary Foundation for their grant that really did help us at the beginning. Now, I'd now like to pass over to my colleague, Nick, who's going to talk to you about 1,000 toilets in West Africa.
Thanks, Wendy. I hope you can all hear me.
Yeah.
As Wendy said, I'm dialing in from Uganda tonight. I'm not actually in Kampala. I'm in a town called Hoima in the northwest of the country. So the internet is not as good as it usually is in Kampala, but let's do our best. I'll keep the video off if that's okay. So thank you to Sam for his introduction to this segment. You set me up rather well, Sam, so thanks for that. If we can go to the first slide. Sam's actually highlighted quite a few elements of the global grant process, which this presentation brings to life a bit, I hope. So maybe just while Wendy's reloading, as Sam said earlier, District 9101 in West Africa covers 10 countries, most of them French speaking, but a couple English speaking. And the DG who became the DG in July, Sunny, has had a long relationship. There he is, he's emerging now. He's had a long relationship with our district, and some of you, I'm sure, know him quite well and have been involved in these past projects. The ice cream van going to Timbuktu with donations, the Water from Eden project, and Ebola awareness support, all of which have been supported by District 1190 in the past. On his becoming DG, Sonny has launched an ambitious project concept to construct 1,000 public toilets across the 10 countries in his district over the next 5 years. And you can see the table there. And Mali is the top target to get 500 toilets. Côte d'Ivoire will get 100 toilets, and all of the remaining countries in his district are targeted to get 50 toilets to make 1,000 in total. So he reached out to us to help sponsor an initial global grant to get this grand project started, and requested that District 1190 provide a DDF donation, which Sam mentioned earlier, to kickstart phase 1. And phase 1 was 4 toilet blocks in Bamako, and each toilet block has 6 individual toilets in it. So if we go to the next slide, we've got an example of what the sort of thing that people in Bamako are coping with at the moment there on the top left, and underneath is the architect's drawing impression of the 6 toilet block there that's being constructed. Sam also mentioned some of the direct impacts that the project's having. So over 1 million people in Mali are still practicing open defecation. This has a lot of health impacts. It has impacts on dignity and security. Obviously, the contamination to water resources and public health risk, but also exposure of women and girls to sexual exploitation and just personal insecurity, and a big impact on girls' education, particularly in schools. If girls don't have water and sanitation provision, particularly in adolescent years, they're put off attending school as they start to menstruate. I've actually been involved myself in projects in South Sudan before, focused on girls' education. This is a big factor in it. As you can see, Bamako has very few public toilets. Most of them are in the sort of condition that's shown there in Sonny's picture on the top left. And so he chose 3 sites for his phase 1, 2 in public bus parks where these minibus taxis park and where passengers are alighting and boarding, and a primary school which had 1,800 pupils, but no toilet provision yet. So some very key sites chosen there as the first phase. Sam also mentioned these Rotary areas of focus, and you see them there in the red box. There's 4 of the key Rotary Foundation areas of focus there that the project targets: disease prevention, water, sanitation, hygiene, maternal and child health, and environment. So we're ticking a lot of boxes in this one. So thanks, Wendy, for the next slide. You just see what we've been able to achieve. Thanks go to Sonny himself, of course, and everyone involved at the Mali end, the construction company, the district officials there, Sam, of course, and our district, and my colleagues in Brampton and Longtown, who encouraged me to get involved as the international sponsor. So you can see there the table on the right that shows the different amounts, and this is maybe a good practical illustration of what Sam was talking about. So we have $15,000 DDF from District 9101. We had $5,000 from our DDF. A past district governor in the Seychelles, I believe, contributed $5,600 himself. And then the World Fund contribution there was $16,000. So that amounts to the total budget that was contributed from the global grant. And that went to construct the the 3 blocks that I mentioned. They were completed on the 16th of July, and here we have some photos of Sonny and some of his colleagues at the unveiling or opening ceremony. Sonny's testing the wash hand basin there, and with some of his other district colleagues. And I think quite a nice point to make is the sustainability, which is another key subheading in the reports that Sam mentioned, that you always need to talk about what's the sustainability strategy for the project. How is it going to continue to benefit people beyond Rotary funding? And in this case, Sonny had a plan already in place, which was to actually charge for advertising space on the walls of these toilets, particularly those that are located in the public bus parks, where lots of members of the public are seeing them regularly. That's his plan for generating funds to maintain them. So just the last slide, I think, is the, again, Wendy mentioned partners and how important partners are to these Rotary projects. And of course, Rotary is there as the key organisation, but the Societe 2KD Real Estate, it was the construction companies, a private sector there. UNESCO also contributed, and I think there were some other local NGOs involved, particularly on the sanitation awareness, hand washing awareness raising, and those sorts of aspects to it. So I hope that's been interesting. Shows a practical example of us as a local Cumbrian club being able to put the international into Rotary International. Thank you.
Well, a big thank you to Wendy and Nick, who have shown that the foundation is there to support good quality, sustainable projects anywhere in the world, including right here in our district. And it's a good example, I think, of Incredible Edible, how you don't have to reinvent the wheel either. The toilets, I think, is pretty interesting, because that links particularly nicely to the subject about women and supporting young ladies. You can also recall perhaps that past District Governor Kevin Walsh led on a major foundation-sponsored project right here in our district in the form of the defibrillators. This was right across the district. It's a project that saves lives. So thank you again to Wendy and Nick, particularly Nick, who's beaming in all the way from Uganda. So thank you very much for that, Nick.
John, there's a couple of questions. I don't know whether Wendy has got time to answer them.
Yeah, can you put them up, please?
Yeah, it's from Val. What advice can you give to anybody wanting to start an Incredible Edible project? What are the main steps?
Can I answer that? Can I answer that now?
Yeah, if you've time, Wendy.
Yeah, that's fine. Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's a very good website, Incredible Edible, which gives a lot of excellent advice and so on. But for us, it was about getting a group of community organisations together, because you do need, obviously, volunteers. Starting to have a look around at where sites are, which are suitable sites as well, because you want places where people can go and pick things as well as do the gardening, and they won't get run over in the process as well in there. And really just to start the planning of where are the plants going to come from. You know, are you going to try and do things in a slow way to start with, rather than actually spending a lot of money in getting them away. So I think it's getting that group of volunteers together, and then I think you'll find that the passion and the interest will actually carry on taking you forward. But there's lots of advice there, and if anybody is interested, then please do you know, get in touch, and I can make a lot of the original information and planning ideas that we had available to them.
Thanks, Wendy. And there's one for Nick. Are the toilets split between male and female, or are they unisex?
Yeah, I believe the answer is yes, they're split. So the slide that Wendy showed with the artist's impression, you see there's 3 toilets that face one way and 3 that face the other way. So 3 are male and 3 are female, and the design, of course, separates them. So the different sexes don't have to go to the same side of the toilet. Better for security, of course.
Thank you. That's it, John.
Well, thank you again to Wendy and Nick. That was a great presentation. And I'd like to move on now, if our next speaker is available. A big issue right around the world is the role and opportunities afforded to women. And I'm very pleased to welcome this evening Roger Frank of Upper Eden Rotary Club. Now, Roger's be well known to many of you as having led many adventures, both at home and abroad, raising countless thousands of pounds doing good in the world. Now, women's football has taken off in a big way here and across Europe, so it seems apt that this evening Roger is going to be talking about the girls' football project in Kenya. Roger, the whistle has gone and it's time for you to kick off.
All right. Well, good evening, all. I must admit, this is a bit of a surprise. I didn't realize I was going to be talking tonight. Yes, we have done as a club lots of district grants. The most recent one that we're working on at the moment is for Kibera, which is a girls' school in the slums of Nairobi. We supplied them computers 10 years ago, and they set up a lab, but they came back to us this time to say that due to the change in the curriculum, they have to have SCAM now, which is science, education and maths, whatever, but they didn't have a science lab. Could we support them in providing a science lab for them? And $2,500, pounds, was all that was necessary in order to buy all the glassware and the test tubes and the Bunsen burners, whatever, so they could have this lab. And that way the girls then could get a tick in the box to say that they'd done STEM, and they were able then to move on to further education. And we're currently halfway through this project. We're working with a local Rotary Club out there. We have provided half of the funds, and district providers very gratefully the other half. So the project is well into proceeding. Hopefully we'll get a report out towards the end of the year of it completed and the laboratory set up out there. This is a girls' school in Kibera. 130 girls are there, and the idea is to keep them out of the slums and being sold and into prostitution and all the other things. Also, a couple of years ago, had another district grant, and very similar to the last project out in Mali. This was a project that we did in Ghana, in the very remote Ghana. I was made aware that there were schools out there with no toilets. There was 25% of the time the children were not at school because of diseases associated with going behind tin sheets to go to the toilet. And we funded, again, the production of 3 toilet blocks out there. And then I like to go and see the projects when they've done, and that's the link back to Mali. I've been to Mali twice and seen the situation there. But I then went out with a mission of laying water on. So right in Bamako, you've got tap water. But out in Ghana, the problem there was that there was no water available. So it was just as simple of using the roof to collect water and into a tank. And then the children were taught how to wash their hands. And I have managed to get a local company over here to provide 2,500 bars of soap, which will give them several years of soap in order to wash their hands. And this is where you can significantly change and improve somebody's lives. Probably all about from me, John. We've done many other projects, but that's 2 that on the top of my head.
Yeah, thank you. You had a project, did you not, about girls' football?
Well, that's the one in Kibera that we're working on in the moment. That school was started as a football academy, and it's progressed on to that, to them educating these 130 girls. And this is in the slums of Kibera in Nairobi. And the problem, because the school is in the slums, they get no support from the government because the government doesn't recognize the slum. So that, you know, the school doesn't recognize. So it's all done by private means, and they just can't afford to put in the science lab. So, you know, for us to provide a science lab that they will get many, many years of use out of, you know, enables the girls to, you know, improve and build on their education.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. I think it's wonderful to look at these projects and how they might seem very simple, but they're able, it helps the girls to build their skills and their confidence. It's opening their opportunities. And you made a good point about the safeguarding part of this. So what starts off as something quite simple has quite a huge impact. And I think it's quite interesting as well, simplicity, sometimes like the bars of soap, can make a huge difference to their health and well-being.
Yeah.
You know, so that's really worthwhile project, and thank you very much for being with us this evening. Thank you, Roger. Right. Well, moving on now to, I'd like to take a few minutes to talk to you about the foundation and polio, and perhaps some of the more wider aspects. Rotary membership members contribute their skills, expertise and resources to help solve some of the world's toughest problems, from providing clean water to promoting peace worldwide. Rotary Foundation grants bring service projects ideas to life. Now, the Rotary International Board has yet to release the figures for 2021-22. So the best that I have available at the moment is the confirmed figures for 2020-21, which make impressive reading in their own right. So here's a few statistics, a couple of which you've heard from Sam earlier. In the year 2020-21, 2,066 global grants, 130 million pounds, 467 district grants worth 31.1 million pounds, and 55 disaster response grants worth 3.1 million pounds. Then there's the new programs of scale. In 2020-21, Rotary awarded $2 million to the Malaria-Free Zambia project, which in turn was match funded by partners to the tune of $4 million. Plus, Rotary has a long history of supporting peace and global scholars. Our Peace Centres support master's degree and professional development certificates. Since 2003, Rotary has sponsored 1,487 Peace Fellows from 115 countries. In 2020-21, Rotary sponsored 117 Peace Fellows from 63 countries to the tune of £4.4 million. We had the great pleasure, Val and I, to go and see the new cohort of Peace Fellows this past weekend when they held their annual seminar, and it was made impressive watching it and showing it. In total, your Rotary Foundation spent a whacking $384 million, an incredible figure only made possible by your donations. Turning to polio, this week Rotary was part of a historic financial pledge at the World Health Summit in Berlin. Governments, NGOs and donors committed $2.6 billion worth of funding towards polio eradication efforts. Rotary has also renewed its long-standing funding partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, meaning that the Rotary $150 million pledge will be matched 2-to-1 and become $450 million. That funding, which includes the $150 million from Rotary, will protect 370 million children per year over the next 5 years in 50 countries. Let me just say that again, that's 370 million children every year over the next 5 years. Now, it's been a turbulent 12 months in the battle to eradicate polio. There's been armed conflict in Afghanistan, severe flooding in Pakistan, the 2 remaining polio endemic countries, And all that is alongside the continued backdrop of the war in Ukraine and the COVID-19 pandemic. And the challenges haven't stayed there. Outbreaks of circulating vaccine-derived poliovirus, that's variants of poliovirus which can emerge in under-immunized areas, have spread across Africa, Asia, and Europe, with new detections in London, New York, and Israel. Sadly, we understand one person has been paralyzed in New York. Now, we used to talk about polio just being an air flight away. Well, now it could just be a train ride or even a car journey away. Your donations don't just go on vaccinations. A key area of the battle is surveillance, surveying, and sampling. And it is this very important work that spotted the virus in London, New York, and Israel. All this demonstrates that the fight against polio is not over, and we must keep our promise to rid the world of this terrible disease. Now, we all know and understand the very difficult economic difficulties facing everyone in this country. Even the smallest contribution can do so much. Just 50 pence can vaccinate a child, preventing paralysis. Now, here's one idea that could help you to support the foundation and the End Polio Now campaign. Have a frugal meal. The idea is a simple one. You pay your usual club meal price, but replace the normal menu with a simple frugal meal of, say, soup and a roll, which will of course be cheaper. You then donate the difference to the foundation and our polio. So if you say 20 members do this and the saving is £5 each, then the donation will be worth £100. If you do this one meal every month, that will be £1,200 on top of your normal usual donations. And it has cost you nothing more on your normal budget. Many clubs donate regularly to the Rotary Foundation, which can also donate as individual by becoming a sustaining member. Put simply, you pay $100, about £76 a year to the Rotary Foundation UK, and you become a sustaining member. Once you've donated a total of $1,000, you automatically become a Paul Harris Fellow. A similar scheme is available for polio donation. If you commit to donating $100 a year to the End Polio Now scheme, you can become a member of the Polio Plus Society. Another perhaps less well-known area of foundation is the Rotary Fellowships, and that's where our next speaker comes in. I'd now like to welcome our keynote speaker this evening, Dr. John Phillip, Chair of the Rotary International Foundation of Healthcare Professionals. And Dr. John is also a past district governor. Rotary provides so many opportunities, one of which is to empower others by using our unique skills and expertise to address community needs and help others discover new professional opportunities and interests. One way to take action through vocational service is to connect with others in your profession through a Rotary Fellowship. Dr. John joined the fellowship over 12 years ago to easily connect with healthcare professionals outside his immediate Rotary circle. The fellowship opened the door to a global network of professionals working on the front line, and he bore witness to the selfless dedication of many of them. They proved an inspiration to him in his professional and Rotary life. Dr. John has put his connections and networks to good use, providing healthcare and invaluable equipment to those victims of the war in Ukraine. This evening, Dr. John's presentation is called The Heart That Pumps Life into the Body of Rotary. Please welcome Dr. John Phillip, Chair of the Rotary International Fellowship of Healthcare Professionals. Good evening, John.
Well, thank you very much, John, for that very generous welcome. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Okay. I'm very sorry that I've not been able to join you from the very beginning of this session, but I've been listening to some of the presentations, particularly Roger and what John just said. Thank you for asking me to talk to you this evening. Now, I want to talk to you about, obviously, about the foundation and particularly how it has changed my life and how it has helped me to connect with people who want to do good in the world in different parts of the world. I hold the heart that pumps life into Rotary. And the reason I wanted to title this presentation in that way is because very recently I gave a talk about the Rotary Foundation to a Rotary district meeting. And there appeared to be a misunderstanding that Rotary Foundation is something separate from Rotary. I think that is a misunderstanding. I think the Rotary Foundation and Rotary are part of the same story. I think they are part of the same organization. And unless we actually recognize that Rotary Foundation is very much part of Rotary, I think we can actually get into a muddle with the way some of the people actually consider Rotary Foundation. I think the reason why I believe that Rotary Foundation is the heart that pumps life into Rotary is because, after all, if I ask you why you join Rotary, I think it is likely that most of you would say that I want to do some good in the world. We can do good in the world in different ways. We can, as individuals, help a neighbor, somebody who wants to, somebody who is somebody driving somebody to hospital, somebody who wants some warm clothes, food delivered, prescription picked up. I think we all do that. As a group of people belonging to a club, we can do quite a lot of help to the community, and most of us do that. But because we belong to a global family, we are also able to do some major global projects. And I think that would not have been possible but for the existence of the Rotary Foundation, and as John just said, by our support to the Rotary Foundation. I think there is sometimes people don't understand that the Rotary Foundation is not a remote or a separate organization from Rotary. It exists to enable Rotarians to advance world understanding, goodwill, and peace through the improvement of health, the support of education, and the alleviation of poverty. So the Rotary Foundation is simply there to help you and me to be able to do good in the world. I think many aspects of Rotary Foundation has already been touched on, but may I just first of all just touch on three things before I explain to you how I got engaged with Rotary. First of all, I think there was a brief mention about the amazing scholarship program that our Rotary Foundation sponsors. This is the world's largest privately sponsored international scholarship programs. So if anyone has yet not been engaged with the scholarship program, I might just ask you to look it up, either contact your Rotary Foundation chair or myself or somebody else who is actually engaged with this program. We have a whole list of scholars who are willing and able to talk to clubs, explaining how the scholarship program has changed their life. I do want to just touch on this subject about Rotary is a major player in doing good in the world. It is not only through simply supporting clubs and clubs activities that Rotary Foundation actually tries to do good in the world. It is a major player on the international diplomacy field of high level organizations. Rotary has representation in a number of international organizations, and I have had the privilege of actually being a Rotary representative at one simple session of the Human Rights Council at the United Nations in Geneva, talking about one of the projects that I was interested in. You may not know about this. Rotary has a group of people, Rotarians, who specialize in auditing Rotary projects. Rotary has a very tight stewardship program and a tight diligence procedure. And when we undertake projects in different parts of the world, we have a whole team of people who actually go out and audit and make sure that our money, our programs are run in the best possible manner. And I have been a member of this technical group of people, cadre, auditing health-related programs in different parts of the world. And this also helps us to learn lessons from how other people are undertaking projects, and bring the lessons that other clubs and districts are learning by undertaking projects in their own country into a much wider global field. Having said that, I want to tell you a little bit about how I got involved with Rotary Foundation. My first experience of Rotary Foundation was in 2009. I happened to go to a small place in Tanzania, and I was invited to take part, assist in an emergency operation. And the sort of situations under which the surgeons were operating was heartbreaking to me. And that is an emergency procedure that surgeon was undertaking. The lights went out, and all that he had at that time was a head torch. And this was the operating theater in which that emergency life-saving operation was carried out. And I came home, and I showed some pictures of these things. I came home and I decided that I need to do something to help this hospital. I was able to network with my clubs and other districts and applied for a global grant to undertake a major refurbishment and a program of health improvement in that hospital. And we were able to take out a team of 28 people to this particular part of Africa and renovate that operating theater. Since then, I have gone out there about 15 times to undertake a number of community development projects, including some work in school. I just heard a project about a program that Roger talked about establishing a science lab in a school. And I undertook similar programs in a small community in Tanzania, much of which was done through the support from Rotary Foundation in different forms. One of the projects I subsequently undertook in Tanzania was a global grant supported project to help the albino community. Some of you may know that the albinos are, there's a cluster of albinos on the shores of Lake Victoria. And I was able to work with the Mennonite Church there with the support of a global grant to undertake a number of projects with the albino community and the local community to remove the misunderstanding and the mistrust about this community. And the problem that the albino community faced was that the local people believed, there was a belief in the local community that body parts of albinos had magical powers. So it was not uncommon for albino children, particularly, to be hijacked, to be kidnapped, the limbs cut off, and the local healers would make magic potions from that and sell it to the local rich people so that they can succeed in business or in negotiations. And we decided that we need to undertake a 3-year program with the help of a global grant. Some of the stories that we heard from the community was heartbreaking. It was not uncommon for mothers to be advised to kill their own babies if the baby had albinism, because the stigma attached to having an albino child in the family would have had a long-term adverse effect on the family and its relationship with the local community. I met this young lady who was in her 20s, who was sitting in a hospital, and she had a a problem in her face. When I asked her whether she would accept some help from me in helping her to go to a big hospital to have this treated, she said no. Plus, she asked me to bury her body when she dies in a coffin in concrete. And the reason she asked me to do that was because there was a habit of grave robbery at that time. If albinos were buried, it was not uncommon to find that the coffin would be stolen so that they can actually take out body parts from the dead body and sell it in the marketplace. And I'm going to show you a picture of this girl. The reason why she asked me to bury her body in the coffin was that her condition around that left side of her face was so advanced that she knew and her local doctors knew that was beyond treatment. I'll show you a picture. Some of you may find it a bit squeamish, but this is what I had to deal with at that stage. But you can understand why I felt compelled to come back to the United Kingdom and mobilize for this project in Tanzania. It was one of the largest global grants that I ever received. It ran for 3 years, and the project was chosen by the Rotary Foundation to be one of the best during that period of 3 years, one of the best projects, international projects at that time. We went from village to village to educate local people about the nature of albinism. And 3 years later, we were able to gather some statistics which showed that the number of attacks on albinos had gone down. I developed a passion for helping the community. And that is how we got involved with the Swedish NGO to work with the community to start planting trees in a small community there. But it expanded into schools. We decided to form environment clubs in primary schools. 30 members were chosen from each primary school. We have this project now running in about 12 different schools, educating them about the value of planting trees, sustainable farming, growing their own crops, and making their own porridge so that they can have school breakfast. They decided to grow maize and sorghum and some vegetables in small bags like that, as well as in the land that's surrounding the schools, surrounding schools. And we were able to go out there and find that in a year's time, they had converted some derelict land around schools to grow their own produce so that they can make porridge to have breakfast. This sort of involvement with the community gradually expanded. We made friends with the community, and we were well respected, and we had an ongoing relationship with the people of this part of Tanzania. We have expanded that program through another district and to build a classroom desks. At the moment, we have been able to supply about 4,000 such desks to schools in Tanzania. Combined with that project, we also decided that we will continue with our tree planting, as well as training local children to learn carpentry. So my personal involvement with Rotary Foundation has been long-standing. I have benefited from the generosity of our members and various types of grants, so that I felt that not only has it changed my life, but it has changed the lives of many of my Rotary colleagues. I've been able to travel out and show people how Rotary Foundation has helped to change other people's lives. So this has helped us to make friends with people who value our association with them, and bring a smile to people's face. Having said that, I want to particularly focus on another aspect of my Rotary journey. I have been able to connect with medics throughout the world because I chair this international fellowship of healthcare professionals. Some of you may not know that within Rotary International, there are subgroups which all of us can join. There are different interest groups, particularly professional groups. So if any one of you is interested to join a fellowship, whatever your interest is, I'll be delighted to connect you with that. This particular fellowship is open to healthcare professionals from any background. So we have currently members in about 80 different countries. We undertake a number of international health-related projects. Again, most of it is supported by Rotary Foundation. We are very lucky. We are independent. We have our own constitution, our own governance structure. We can determine our own priorities. We have been able to form 2 subgroups. We have a subgroup that looks at health outcomes and patient safety. We have our own guidelines, and we are trying to tell people whoever is engaging with health improvement programs to make sure that patient safety, hygiene, water, sanitation, These things are all should all be part of their consideration before they invest money in any hospital. There is absolutely no point in supplying equipment to a hospital if that hospital has not got the physical facilities to make sure that the equipment that we supply are sustainable and that they have the ability to make use of that. So we are we have a set of guidelines we apply in and try to engage, try to explain to people that before they actually support any health program, there are certain criteria should be met before they invest any money in that. We have a program which is trying to tell people that any medical equipment we supply should be only such equipment that are actually usable and manageable by a local hospital. I have seen some expensive medical items being supplied to hospitals which have been totally unable to make use of such equipment. I think most of you would have come across wasted Rotary resources given with goodwill to other people. We have two branches, and this brings me to my involvement with Ukraine. We have a branch in Cairo where we support quite a big heart program, and we were able to travel out there to Cairo in March last year and meet with the Cairo Rotarians. This is an ongoing program, and we have been able to raise several £1,000 or dollars to assist the local clubs in Cairo to undertake surgery for poor people who suffer from heart conditions. But quite by coincidence, I had a branch chartered in Ukraine in January 2022. I was going to fly out there in January to charter this branch, but circumstances changed and situation changed in February, and I was not able to, understandably, not able to travel out to Ukraine. But in 2 weeks into the war, I decided that I would call a meeting of my members from Ukraine. And there are 15 members, 15 medical members of Rotary in Ukraine who were members of the fellowship. And they attended the meeting along with 70 other members from different parts of the world. At that point, we had no agenda, no plan, no idea how we might actually offer help to Ukrainians, and we had no idea about the extent of damage and suffering that the Ukrainians were exposed to at that point. But at that meeting, there were 8 different doctors from Ukraine told us the conditions under which they were working. And bombing had already started. The Russians were targeting health facilities right from the very beginning of the war. And some of the stories they told us what was terrible. And I think there was an attack on ambulances, pharmacies, and health depots. So we decided that the Fellowship of Healthcare Professionals need to form a group with international partnership and try to offer assistance to Rotarians in Ukraine. Our focus in the early stages was purely supplying what they needed for emergency trauma care. Some of the injuries they were facing was terrible. They wanted things like tourniquets, bandages, syringes, needles, drip sets, so on and so forth. And we were able to mobilize supplies, a large quantity of supplies, mainly from the United Kingdom. But I was able to reach out at that point to colleagues in Europe as well. And together with the colleagues from Europe, we started mobilizing support into Ukraine. We were able to use our connections with Poland. So Rotary had access to a warehouse in Poland. So support from Italy, Austria, Slovakia, and the United Kingdom, as well as Germany, started arriving in Poland. and Polish Rotarians would assist in transporting things across the border into Ukraine and hand it over to our contacts in Ukraine. And we were able to immediately, within the first month of the war, sent out quite a large quantity of first aid and trauma care products into Ukraine, which we believe may well help to save lives. But gradually, the requirement for the Ukrainian medics and the civilians changed, and I decided that we'll form a Ukrainian task group. And we were able to meet on a regular basis, initially once a week, to decide to hear from them what was the need for them at that point in time. You will know that Rotary in Great Britain and Ireland has formed a liaison group with members from Ukraine. So I represent the fellowship in that group, and I have been given the responsibility of coordinating medical response from the United Kingdom for Ukraine. I do report to Rotary International and the Rotary Foundation. So it has been possible, therefore, to coordinate the medical supply in Ukraine at this point of greatest need for that community. Over a period of time, we realized that we need to broaden our involvement with the Ukrainians. We formed various subgroups. We have a subgroup procurement, supply of devices and medicines. I do believe this is important. I think at a time of crisis like this, there is a tendency for all people with generous heart to gather anything they can get hold of and supply to put it into containers or into trucks and send it into Ukraine. I would strongly advise against that. Supplies has to be as per the need of the people out there. They have to be targeted, they have to be focused, they got to be specific. We got to understand what is it that they need, and we also need to understand where they need the supplies. And we have been able to therefore be very specific in the way we supplied medical items to frontline doctors. We have a subgroup now looking at the care of maternity and childcare in Ukraine. I'll mention a little bit more about that in a minute. We have been able to put together a support system. A lot of these doctors on the front line are suffering tremendous stress and mental health problems. And we have a confidential support system available for them if they want to make use of that. And we have been able to form a small subgroup to look into the support that vulnerable groups would require in due course of time. Most of our work has been supported by generous donation from clubs and districts and individuals within the United Kingdom and beyond. But we have also benefited from a number of disaster response grants. And I want at this stage to say a huge thank you to Velma Robertson. I think she's on this call. Thank you for your support. And I will mention a little bit about how your support has possibly helped to save lives in Ukraine. Until now, we have been able to purchase and transport 3,339,000 pounds worth of equipment as per the request from Ukrainians into Ukraine, and distribute those things to specific hospitals. Last week, we had a presentation from one of the surgeons in Ukraine. These are the pictures he showed us. Some of you may find it horrifying. I knew about this. Some of the injuries the local people, civilians and army people are suffering are things that we have never ever seen in any other parts of the world. And I think some of the conditions they are dealing with are terrible. And some of the support, some of the instruments that we are given have almost certainly saved lives and certainly saved limbs. And thanks to some of the support that I have had from your own district, we have been able to purchase 20,000 tourniquets. These are purchased in Slovakia and taken into Ukraine and to be distributed to paramedics as well as other medics. And you may know that each tourniquet has the potential of saving a life. So once again, I just want to say a huge thank you to your district and to members of your club. We have been able to, the way we work with that is that each week I get a request from Ukrainian doctors. And if I get a request for approximately, usually it is in sort of order of 2,000 tourniquets per week, I place an order with suppliers in Slovakia, and there's a Rotary Club there which coordinates the purchase and transport of those tourniquets into Ukraine. And further on, Ukrainian medics, Ukrainian Rotarians take it out to where they are required. Some time ago, we had a request that a number of newborn babies are suffering because they're not able to. This is a particular type of breathing apparatus specifically designed for babies. This can keep the babies alive at the early stages of their life until they are able to breathe on their own. And they were desperately short of these particular small kit, which had the potential of saving children's lives. And Julia Bittner is a Rotaractor. She contacted me, and I was able to source these things in Germany, and with the help of local contacts, get them to Julia, and she has distributed it to 15 cities in Ukraine. And she sent me that comment and a picture of the people who were involved in the distribution of this little device. And I do want to pause there and ask you to go through to the last sentence, because investing in health of our children is investing in future. Thank you for your commitment to Ukrainian people. Sending you my love. That is the sort of thing that makes it all worth it. And I would not have been able to do this but for the help of Rotarians in different parts of the world. In the last month or so, I've been made aware of the particular problem, women who are women who are pregnant, particularly at the latter stages of the pregnancy phase. I started talking to some specialists in Ukraine and found out that they were seeing a larger number, proportionally higher number of children being born who are below their average weight, underweight. I think we tried to do some research into that and found out that these women who become pregnant under the terrible conditions under which they live, the babies do not develop in a normal way. So it was not unexpected. I've been able to source that. I've been able to verify that whenever there is war and conflict, there's low birth weight babies will be born. And some of these babies born will struggle to breathe. And at those early stages of their life, if they are not able to take in sufficient oxygen, they will be oxygen starved. And that oxygen starvation can produce brain injuries. And I gathered data from 37 different hospitals in Ukraine and found that I'll just give you a small figure, that the number of babies born who were oxygen starved was in the order of 2.6% of live births. And it may sound a little bit, it may not mean much to you, but if I tell you that the standard or the expected rate is less than 0.2%, there's always in any pregnancy things can go wrong, and if it's less than 0.2%, that itself is a crisis. That is not acceptable. People say that even that is too high. But 2.6% is almost 10 times higher than what we have in the United Kingdom and they have no means of reducing that number. And that 2.6% of low birth oxygen-starved children are going to grow up either mentally or physically abnormal, and they are going to be a burden to the community and to the family. So we approached the Ministry of Health in Ukraine with a program of intervention to improve the care of these newborn babies. And we have been able to get several supports from several professional organizations in Ukraine, and also international support. It's a well-controlled, protocol-driven program, which is going to be run in 37 different hospitals. Our expectation is that this would improve the condition. The predicted number of births that are going to be going to have some benefit from this program is about 30,000. So we believe that by instituting this program, we are going to save lives and also reduce the number of children being born with birth injuries. At the moment, we have gathered all the required equipment for this program. And in 2 weeks' time, we are going to transport these things to Ukraine and distribute them to the 37 hospitals. And we have agreed with them that they will share the data with us. And I sincerely hope that one of these days I'll be able to come back to you to say that this is something that you have helped to actually make us happen. And this time I want to turn to Welma and tell her something specific about this. Until 3 weeks ago, when we were putting this program together, there was no need for us to supply generators. And the reason I say this is that, sorry about that. The reason I say that is that in the last 2 weeks, you have heard stories from Russia of escalating civilian attacks on civilian targets. There has been specific targets on hospitals and power supplies. And a number of these 37 hospitals have lost their power supply. And most of the equipment that we provide has to have supplies, electricity supply. These are baby scanners and ultrasound scanners and small instruments that are power, they need power. So we have decided to add to our list generators so that they can actually make use of the equipment that we provide. So I will be talking to Burma again to see whether one of your district response grants can be utilized to enhance this program in buying generators, which is part and parcel of the same program. We are supporting some mobile treatment centers. One of the clubs in Ukraine are putting together, constructing some mobile units, and they require some simple instruments in the mobile units so that they can provide trauma care for people who are injured. That last sentence is important. An estimated 80% of the injured will be able to be treated in these clinics. And this is the reason why we are getting involved in that. And I've been able to mobilize support for this in the United States also. This is a program that we are just talking about, and there is some hope that we will be able to support the group of vulnerable people in Ukraine. This is a legacy from the Russian system. It has been, what we found is that the people who are either physically or mentally disabled are institutionalized. Some of you probably may have come across stories from Romania and Ukraine, that there's institutionalizing people who are in some way, physically or mentally underdeveloped or undeveloped, is a very common thing there. And parents simply abandon their children and they are taken into institutions. And I think 3 weeks ago, we had a presentation from a charity who's looking after such people in Ukraine. And we were told that there were some institutions in the front line on the eastern part of Ukraine. And there was a policy was instituted to evacuate some of these institutions of their residents. And the policy they adopted was that they will evacuate those residents who were mobile, and those who were not mobile were left behind. Those who required special transport was left behind. So we have been able to connect with a number of charities who are Ukraine-based, as well as some of the charities in the United Kingdom, and I've been able to put together a small subgroup to work with this particular vulnerable group of people. We have been able to make an impact in a specific way in Ukraine. Most of the supplies we have got into Ukraine have reached their target. There's always a little bit of worry where some of these things will get lost and some of these things may not actually get to the right place. But because of the local contacts that we have, Rotary contacts we have been able to make sure that the things that we supply are reaching the specific hospitals where they are needed. So unlike many other charities, because of the network of people we have within Ukraine, we have been able to make sure that Rotary is playing a big role in providing support for Ukrainians. And thank you for listening to me. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. John. You've packed an awful lot into that presentation this evening. I wouldn't know where to start. When you look at the various aspects, like the simple terms, the issue about toilets, the hospital conditions, the issue of stigma, it makes you appreciate what we have. It's also interesting that sometimes a lot of the things that's needed are actually quite simple. And I took on board, for example, the desks, the 4,000 desks. You don't think about these things. Sometimes it's the very basic things that we really need. You made an interesting point as well about making sure that we send the right equipment and that there are the people there who can use it. And that shows the value of doing your research beforehand and doing a good community audit and getting that expert advice. And as I mentioned early on this evening, that expert advice is available through people like Phil Davis, our international team leader, who has a complete list of people who have expertise in these areas. And it's interesting how things change quickly. You talked about that now we need generators to help out. And it's also been quite incredible to learn just how much Rotary has been able to contribute to help out both your team and on the ground. So I'd like, if you will, to take with us our sincere thanks to you and to your team and all the people on the ground. We'll do our best to help, and thank you for being so generous in your thanks to our district and to Bell in particular. I don't know if we have any questions for the Dr. Malcolm.
Yeah, there's one in from Roger Mason. Are there any special efforts going on to help the elderly?
Not that I know of, Malcolm. I think when I mentioned the vulnerable group program, we are currently working with people who are disabled, but I know that there is a group that has actually contacted me, the dementia group, whether we can bring care for the elderly into that or not, I don't know at this stage. Is there anything that is in your mind that we may be able to do?
Well, I don't know. It was something from Roger, whether he's going to come back. I don't know. That's just give him a minute.
Yeah, it's difficult to know where to go, or how far we can. I mean, the need for the Ukrainian community, the needs are vast. I think children need education. They need. There is a lot of children who are suffering mental health issues. There's a huge problem there. But I think the elderly people, if you can join us for talking about how we can support the vulnerable people, that would be wonderful.
Well, if there is a further question, Malcolm, perhaps we could send it on to Dr. John in due.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Dr. John. That was very interesting, thought-provoking your presentation, and I, for one, was very moved. Thank you very much for giving up your time tonight, because I know you're a very busy person. And as I say, please pass our regards on to your team. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, we've heard an awful lot this evening, but that's just been the tip of the Rotary iceberg. Nonetheless, I hope it's gone some way to demonstrate that what your Rotary Foundation is doing 24/7, 365 days a year. Our speakers have also dispelled the myths about that the foundation is only about international projects. Like many of you, I've been involved in voluntary work in one way or another for much of my life. But I can't recall actually being asked by a child or a mother asking directly for help. Yet, like you, I've been very happy to reach out, sometimes halfway around the world, to help others with no expectations of thanks, nor do I need it. There are a couple of experiences though I'd like to share with you. Many years ago, I became acquainted with a young man in Bradford who, through drugs, had hit rock bottom. But he got help. He stuck with the programs, sometimes with great difficulty, and he used to sell the big issue in all weathers in the city of Bradford. One day he told me he was moving to Leeds, where he had got a flat and a job in his old trade as a decorator. I gave him some money to help him get started, and on the condition that he spent it on decorating his new flat. About 18 months later, I was back in Bradford when I was passing through the central square. I heard this voice shouting to me, and it was this young man. And he told me that he was doing very well, he was working, he had a girlfriend, but most importantly, he wanted to tell me that he'd kept his promise and he'd spent my donation on decorating his flat. When I asked him what he was doing back in Bradford, he said that a friend who'd been in a similar background to him had died, and he wanted to encourage others like him to stick with the programs so they could succeed and have a better life. The second experience occurred just a few days ago. As you'll know, many of us are involved in the Wrap Up campaign, collecting warm winter coats and donating them to all those in need this winter. One such group in need are the Ukrainian refugees, many of whom escaped with nothing but a few things in a bin liner. A couple of days ago, we had some Ukrainian women in choosing coats for themselves, and they were all very grateful. One lady who had no money was so grateful, she offered Val a cake. Indeed, she insisted that she took the cake as her way of saying thank you. Here's the cake, so have it. Now they say that we move through life like a boat traveling up a lake. No matter how careful we are, we leave a wake behind us. Sometimes the smallest gesture can make a huge difference to someone's life. Take it for the 50 pence I mentioned earlier as vaccinations. As a Rotarian, you can be very proud and justifiably shout about what the Rotary Foundation does on your behalf. And for all of those who you have helped but can't say this to you, thank you for doing good in the world. Finally, can I say a big thank you to our speakers this evening, Sam Jones, Wendy Aldred, and Nick Ramsden, Roger Frank, Dr. Philip, and a big thank you to Past District Governor Malcolm Baldwin for his technical support this evening. And of course, thank you for attending this evening. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and please support your Rotary Foundation and the End Polio campaign. Thank you and good night.